what has happened in the last, I would say, 72 hours. In the last 3 days, we had the funeral in Iran, and you see the crowd, the huge crowd coming out. I have never seen this, this sort of crowd coming out for anything in my life, because and this is the country that was supposed to collapse before this war started, and they said that this guy, the supreme leader of Iran, has no support in Iran, and let's go there, do this and that, we're going to bring everything down. And it seems that each and every strategy on the part of the Trump administration backfired so far. And the situation right now is that there were two attacks in the southern part of Iran
Right.
because of the confrontation in the Strait of Hormuz. And Donald Trump, moments ago, an hour ago, he posted that the ceasefire is over. And in a video, he said he's not going to get back to all out war against Iran. So, what does that mean, Ambassador? Let's start with the funeral and with what does that mean for Donald Trump and his administration?
Well, I think what it means is that Iran is firmly entrenched in its position. It has no real incentive to yield. Donald Trump has the habit of saying, well, we have to bring them to the negotiating table, by which he means bringing them to the table to sign a surrender agreement, not to negotiate. And I noticed that there are leaks coming out of the White House saying that technical negotiations continue. I don't believe that for a minute. I don't think there are any negotiations. The so-called Memorandum of Understanding was an agreement on a framework for conducting negotiations. But every element of it wasn't a ceasefire, but every element of it has now been violated. So what happens next? I guess the next time Iran enforces its control of the Strait of Hormuz against vessels trying to travel on the southern Omani route, it will fire at them. And then there will be another American reprisal, and nothing will happen. There's no diplomatic path at all. There's no military path. It's a complete impasse. Iran is there. It doesn't have to project its power around halfway around the world. It has the advantage in this kind of confrontation of attrition. Who has the greatest staying ability, basically, will determine this. So the war has turned out to be a complete farce. I note that the crowds in Iran to commemorate the life of the late Ayatollah Ali Khamenei also included a fairly large element of people who were against any compromise with the United States. President Pezeshkian had to be rescued from people calling him an appeaser and objecting to the so-called MOU. So I don't think the calculus, if there was one, that Israel convinced the United States of, that Iran was fragile and would fall under pressure, had any basis at all. Certainly what has happened is the opposite.
There are military advisors in the United States, General Wesley Clark, he, together with Keith Kellogg, they both argue that the United States option would be the occupation or somehow invasion of these islands in the southern part of Iran. I don't know, Ambassador, do they really care about the people who are getting killed? And are these people serious when they're talking this way? Or what is the understanding on their part?
No, I don't. I think they are speaking out of frustration. Certainly President Trump is terribly frustrated. He's put himself in a box. He's facing a midterm election, which he's going to lose, in large part because of this war. The left in the Democratic Party is on the rampage, notwithstanding the removal of Mr. Plattner from the Senate contest in Maine, which we can talk about. I mean, that essentially was, in my view, a political assassination. That is to say, something that happened 4 years ago that was never talked about, a woman who was his former girlfriend who claimed he raped her, could have brought charges against him, and this could have gone to court. That's what one of the women that Mr. Trump raped did. He was convicted or found guilty in the court of having attempted rape of E. Jean Carroll. The woman in Maine could have done that. She didn't. And very suspicious that she finally comes forward with this charge just as the political damage to Mr. Plattner is likely the greatest. In any event, he's out of the race, but there's still an effort made to silence his supporters and exclude them from a role in replacing him. So Mr. Trump is being besieged. He has no answer to the quandary that he has created in the Strait of Hormuz. In the meantime, the war in Lebanon goes on. That element of the MOU has not been addressed. And all indications are that Iran has complete ability to continue this confrontation for as long as necessary, whereas the United States lacks the weaponry and the staying power. It's operating a fleet at long distance from the United States. That fleet has not been able to open the Strait of Hormuz under the most favorable circumstances militarily. These occasional blows, and attacking 90 targets in mostly southern Iran, it's not a trivial matter, but it's something that Iran can survive, and it can retaliate. I think the big question now is whether the war will extend to Israel. That is, will Iran feel obliged to retaliate not only against Kuwait and Bahrain, and in this case Qatar, but also Israel? And we'll see. But no peace, no war, combat on an occasional basis is what we're likely to see for the foreseeable future. And this is not going to do good things to the world economy. In the meantime, basically, the passage through the strait has been shut down. It's not happening. And therefore, oil is not coming out. Gas is not coming out.
Yeah. We have the Qatari delegation, as we talk, they're in Iran, talking with Iranians, trying to, I don't know what is the argument, what is the discussions, what are the discussions there, because so far, MOU looking at pretty much everything was violated since this signing of the MOU.
And Witkoff now, there's a quote from Bezalel Smotrich, who said that Witkoff told him the Palestinians in Gaza are Nazis, and I'm not going to allow Israel to have to live alongside Nazis. This is an indication of how utterly insincere and incompetent and biased and ineffectual Mr. Witkoff is. If he did say that, it shows that he is a bloodthirsty Zionist. Of course, the people who are behaving like Nazis are not the Palestinians, but the Israelis. They are the ones conducting genocide. They are on the offensive. They are invading neighboring countries. Palestine is defending itself as best it can, which is not very well.
Yeah. I said I saw that video that Smotrich said that, and Ambassador, when it comes to the MOU and the negotiation, Axios reported that next week going to be the negotiations between Iran and the United States in Switzerland. Who's going to be there? I don't know if Donald Trump is going to have some sort of meeting with himself in Switzerland.
I guess so. Or somebody will meet somebody in Switzerland, but I don't think Iran is in a position where it feels any pressure to negotiate. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever bought a rug in the bazaar. I have. When you get into a situation there comes a time when the best thing to do is just sit there and look at the other guy and don't say anything. And that's exactly where Iran is. They're not saying anything. They're sitting there. They're looking Trump in the eye. Okay, Mr. Trump, you want a solution, make a concession. He doesn't seem to know how to do that.
No. They had the sanctions on the Iranian oil sector lifted, but that got back on Tuesday after
Yes.
the attacks on these tankers. And what was so serious on the part of Iranians that the United States tried to use the warship in the Strait of Hormuz, which was they forced that warship out of the strait, and they say no, that's not going to happen. It's not about using the Omani part of the strait. It's about the U.S. military getting back to the Strait of Hormuz.
Right. Well, I think the removal of the license for Iranian oil exports to be paid for in dollars is a very stupid move by the United States. First of all, what this shows is that nothing in the United States is reliable. It says it does is reliable. You can't count on American policy. One day it's this way, and the next day it's the opposite. And so why do a deal with the United States when the United States will not keep its word, is not constant, reserves the right to act entirely unilaterally? That's the first point. The second point is, if you deprive Iran of the ability to use dollars, it will find other currencies to use, including the Chinese currency, but not exclusively the Chinese currency. And that will be true of others. So this is more likely to do damage to the dollar and its position in world trade and the existence of the petrodollar than it is to solve any problem for the United States. It's not going to open the Strait of Hormuz. It's not going to stop Iran from exporting oil in other currencies. What's the point of it? It is more, bullying behavior that somehow is supposed to produce an Iranian capitulation. But Iran is not in a mood to capitulate. Quite the opposite. As I indicated, the moderate voices in Iran, for example, President Pezeshkian, are under attack by hardliners. The pressure on Iran is not toward compromise. It is toward a harder stand. So I don't understand the calculus behind the Trump maneuvers. You mentioned the Trump strategy. I don't think Trump has a strategy. I think all he has is tactics. He reacts to the events of the moment. Everything is short term. There's no long-term vision for a solution. I think he and the American economy will pay a price for this.
I think he's in his mind, he's dealing with Islamic Republic of Japan, and because he mentioned that, he said that he was talking about Iran. He said the Islamic Republic of Japan attacked us with 111 missiles, and we have to respond.
I don't think the Islamic Republic of Japan exists yet. There is still an emperor, and Japan, as far as I know, is not Jewish, not Christian, not Muslim, but something else. So this is typical of someone who is suffering mental deterioration. He is clearly in the grips of dementia. He's 3 or 4 years younger than I am, and I'm very conscious of the extent to which memory deteriorates as you get older, but his deterioration is really serious. He cannot now issue a complete paragraph of thoughts. He can't even complete a sentence with certainty. And he makes this sort of mistake, just demonstrating his ignorance and his inability to master the facts. Compare him with Vladimir Putin, who can get up and give a very cogent speech. You might not agree with it, but it is logically organized, factually based, detailed, coherent, all the things that everything Donald Trump says are the opposite.
Yeah. He was in the NATO summit in Turkey, and then we had attacks. And one of the main objectives, it seems that during the meeting he had with Al Jolani, is to use Syria or the combination of Syria together with Turkey, maybe to do something with Lebanon. I don't know how much Syria can help Donald Trump. And they're talking about sending American troops even to Lebanon. Is there any sort of sign, in your opinion, that you may say that he's trying to do something? He's trying to come out with some sort of solution, not he himself, but the people around him.
Well, of course, sending troops to Lebanon is a bad idea. I'm old enough to remember when we did that in 1958, and we were driven out by the Lebanese. In 1982, we had the explosion of the embassy and the Marine Corps base in Beirut, and Ronald Reagan withdrew sensibly. Putting American troops in the middle of Lebanon is not a good idea, and I don't think anyone will agree to that. The Lebanese government remains impotent, and it has delegitimized itself with this agreement brokered by Marco Rubio, which is the absolute antithesis, refutation of point one about Lebanon in the Memorandum of Understanding. The Memorandum of Understanding commits the United States to get Israel out of Lebanon. Marco Rubio negotiated an agreement with the Lebanese government that keeps Israel in Lebanon and gives it a free hand to do what it wants. So there is total contradiction here, no coherence in American policy. And I remember, I think it was Seneca, the Roman philosopher, who said, if you don't know to what port you're steering, no wind is fair. No, you have to have a destination in mind. What is the destination? The removal of Lebanese sovereignty? The annexation of southern Lebanon by Israel? On what grounds? On what principle? With what assurances? With what agreement from which Lebanese? I think, of course, Israel would welcome a civil war in Lebanon, a renewed civil war. And it may get one because the Lebanese government has behaved in a fashion that deprives it of legitimacy in the eyes of most Lebanese. And I noticed that they've been condemned by the Speaker of the Parliament, Nabi Berri, who is Shiite, but not Hezbollah. Of course, Hezbollah has declared everything the Lebanese government has done in this context as illegitimate, null, and void. What's the point? This is performative actions intended to look good in Israel and to make Marco Rubio seem like some kind of diplomat, which he is not.
There is a report, Ambassador, in the Financial Times basically saying that the tensions between Saudi Arabia and UAE is growing because they're slowing down the trade between the two. And it's all about, in my opinion, the new changes in the region and how these changes are perceived on the part of Saudi Arabia and UAE. How do you see their position right now?
Well, I think there's a great deal of antagonism. Not only was the UAE on the side of Israel and the United States in this war, whereas Saudi Arabia, although it did provide some help to the United States for a while, eventually decided it was in its interest not to help the United States and ceased to do so. UAE earlier withdrew from OPEC. the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, which is a largely Saudi-guided organization. So that was a break with the Saudis. Now we hear that the Saudi Arabian financial system is not allowing transfer payments to the UAE. I'm not sure what the basis for that is, but clearly the two are not on the same wavelength. And I agree with you. One of the major differences they have is that the Saudis clearly are talking to Tehran about a post-war situation in which there will be no American forces on Saudi soil. And the UAE is talking to Iran also, but I don't think it has made that offer. Maybe it has. The last round of retaliations by Iran did not include the UAE, which I think is significant. So the UAE, which is a master realpolitik, may very well be doing something to mollify Iranian opinion. Clearly, Kuwait and Bahrain are in a very difficult position. Bahrain remains the headquarters of the Fifth Fleet of the United States Navy, although those facilities themselves have been destroyed. And Bahrain has no capacity to defend itself. It is, in many ways, an extension, a subsidized ally of Saudi Arabia, client state. Historically, it was part of the Safavid Empire and under Persian control. Its majority is Shiite, whereas its emir is Sunni. There's a lot of discontent even before the bombing. So Bahrain must be regarded as quite unstable. It does have a garrison from Saudi Arabia and other countries in the Gulf Cooperation Council to help put down domestic dissent. But it is not in a politically stable condition. Kuwait is in a difficult position. Kuwait, of course, was liberated from Iraq by an American-led coalition, or two coalitions, an American-led one and a Saudi-led coalition. And it has been very grateful to the United States for that liberation. It has been very close to the United States. It has completely reversed the earlier situation. Few people remember that during the War of the Cities and during the War of the Tankers in the Persian Gulf in the 1980s, during Operation Enduring Freedom, which was, sorry, that's not the right word, the operation to escort Kuwaiti tankers through the Gulf. But prior to that, Kuwait was the one member of the Gulf Cooperation Council that had no military cooperation with the United States. And in fact, it objected to the American prepositioning of equipment in Oman. And it almost broke relations with Oman over that issue. After the Gulf War of 1990 to 91, Kuwait has been stalwartly pro-American. It is also, by the way, the most pro-Palestinian of all of the Gulf Arab countries. It's in an odd position. It has a border with Iran. It has a problem with Iraq still. It has American garrisons, an air base, Ali al-Salam air base, and facilities now on Bubayan Island in the northern part of the Persian Gulf. It's very vulnerable, and it can't really bring itself to get rid of the American presence. Final note here is that we have the former heads of CENTCOM saying that the American presence in the Gulf should retreat to Israel. It should go west. It should not be there. So it seems maybe they agree with Iran about something.